What's good on YouTube? Time for a little recap on how we did today. So, FOMO all-time high moving, right? So, we had one care and one care only for the start of the day, and that was getting long over 613.21 or getting short back down to yesterday's high under 613.21, which is obviously the prior all-time high. So we said there's a higher percentile chance that the SPY will have a rubber band effect to the upside because Qs has already been moving all-time high. We talked about this on our stream for the futures live trading as well. So the magnets, we had a couple extensions here, worked out very well today. The open had a little bit of a draw back down, hit the pre-market open level, which is one of my favorite over-under levels, and went right to the 2618, 613.68. This is an extension from the 25th, right, of this month. That is a high-low extension that puts resistance at 613.68 from the 25th candle back here. Now, notice we came out of that 25th 100, went to the 1618. In general rule of thumb, the Fibonacci should return to the 100 before going to the 2618. It did not do that because we are obviously rubber banding FOMO all-time high pushes. So you are obviously looking for that further move. So yesterday, we didn't quite get to that 2618. So today, notice how that pre-market price action pushed up and just sat right on the algorithmic level of 2618. So we needed a live tag of that. So I told my chat we need a live tag of 613.68. So if regardless we stay down here and long it right up into there, we scalp that for the first one. And then we looked for trend dominance over the all-time high of 613.21. And we got that all the way up to almost the 3618. There's one last target I gave out. Let's remove these real quick. We can talk about those in a second. Was the pre-market high-low extension of the 1618. That's about the top where I wanted to see it, right? So we came up, kind of shied that direct 1618, came down, held that 100 zone, and then up to the real 1618, and then tagged down. Now, what I left my chat with was a short scenario for the volatility index to complete confirmation for the pullback we seen coming. So very early, the volatility index showed us that any price action holding 1622 as a marker we're looking would be able to shoot up over the 100 EMA and grind up to retracing the Fibonacci. So the last couple of videos I put out this interesting algo candle fib to the downside, and we like to recycle fibs, which means price action went down to the 1618, 2, 3, 4, 666, and then after that full 666 is completed for an extension, it likes to cycle back to the upside. So any support above 1610 is what we wanted to see. Here's 1611, here's 1612, and we found support. Now we need to run the Fibonacci recycle back up the ladder since we have been down the ladder of the extensions. So we came up and my targets were all the way as high as the 1618. That's the max, and this is where the VIX came from. So anything over the 100 EMA and the VIX would net us a breakout point to the 423, 3618, 2618, 1618, and we did get all those targets. So let's take a look at the last short I told my chat about, two different ones here. As far as the SPY goes, I said as long as you're sizing up very small, we'll get a dive back down to this golden pocket because we had multiple golden pockets down here on the 5-minute chart that were not tagged. All we had to do was stay under this 1618 and you'd get a big pivot to the downside. I chose Qs, right, on the opposite side, and I put a marker for Qs, and I said Qs has already been FOMO moving at all-time highs, so it would be more reputable to take the QQQ short because it is less of a challenge and less of a fight than fighting an all-time high first day all-time high FOMO mover like the SPY grinding up those shorts, kicking their butts. So let's focus on that QQQ trade. I said that would be a better short call. And like I said, I told you we would get that short call today as long as we were under the 1618 here and then continuation 1618 here, even if it was just down to the GP on SPY. But I was more adamant on the QQQ than anything. And I even told you guys on the SPY, even if you started short here, go really small with MESs. And then as you near 1680, start adding in those MESs as we come up in here to get a better average, just in case you didn't want to miss the early dump because it was going to run up, and then after that 10:30, 11 marker generally the algos flip off and we can have a trend change direction. So both patterns would have worked, but we're going to focus on just this last Q's trade here that we called, and that was to the gap fill because it did not deserve the gap shy that it had. So let's talk about it. So the price action opened up on the QQQ and we went long all morning. That was the call over all-time high SPY up to 550 pretty much, 67. And of course, psychological half whole dollars, we made it within 1 penny of the 550 we talked about here on the Q short. So when you notice the open here, yesterday's highs is in the orange dashed line at 546.67. We shied that, which means price action came down very close, but did not connect to yesterday's highs, thus leaving an action gap there. So coming into the top of the market, notice my short sentiment. And I said, guys, all you got to do is wait for the SPY to dump out of those 1618s. And I'm comfortable with you guys taking a short under 549.67 as it is my special extension for the short today. So we double tops this area right into extension called, and we wanted to just go to yesterday's highs. So from there, we called over 100 points, I think it was, to the downside. It's 120. I didn't call exactly 120 points, though. I think I said under pre-market high, but I did draw this for sentiment-wise, and I said really get aggressive under the pre-market high, which is this light blue level at 549.19 cents. So let's call it pre-market high down to the gap fill and not really gloat about it too much. So it's a little over 100 points. So we did get that one consecutive, and this is the chat call that I made for my group. And I do want to look at one or two other little things. So the oscillation indicators here, I do want to give you this pair, and we talked about this live in chat as we streamed it. I said when a hot hits on the RSI, we need a reset. So I said, guys, wait, come to the RSI MACD. When the RSI comes back to the 50, rotates back up, puts in a lower high, and then continues back down. Same with the MACD. And that's why I said short later on is safer. So you came down, 10:30, 11 a.m. Algo Euro changes right here. Right where that short sentiment takes off. Then you notice the lower high in the RSI, and that MACD had a really nice sell wave completion after moving average crosses. Let me expand that if you can't see it there. You can see the moving averages cross right here and started widening up really good to the downside, pivoting for that short. Now, again, I wasn't looking at the entirety of moves, but to where it went to, the 1618, but fibs do recycle. So here's your high low of the fibs we used. And then the extension was the 2618 that needed a live tag that we talked about. And it was really cool to see the yesterday's high shy push to resistance, then get our call. But all it did was go fib to fib, because this is not an indicator. It's literally life's indicator, not the stock market. The Fibonacci is very important. So it did go from the 2618 to the 1618, even though as my sentiment calls, I would have only went it short there to yesterday's highs, thus filling the gap shy here. So I want to show you one small other entry point we had here. So we did about 1700 or so on these. They're already reset because it's after hours by far. But I want to show you the anchor VWAPs from the NQ's 5-minute here that I would have used for this trade as well, since we talk about anchors a lot. So the 5-minute chart, obviously in the NQ, is going to show you the same thing. There's that double tapping action, 10:30, 11 a.m. Central. And then I put these anchors on the prior highs, the wick highs of the day and the lower high. Now, notice these are just like a generalized trend dominancy of rolling support and resistance. That's how we use them. So I put them just on the prior two tops. That's it. And then once we had seen price action struggle, right? Because we said after 10:30, 11 and SPY needed to go under the 1618. So there was a chance that was going to come back up double top, but as long as you were at the 2618 on Qs that we just discussed, we were good. After it broke down, you can see that it got stuck under those 5 minutes right here, anchors, those VWAPs, right? And it started rejecting and creating structure lows. So we had this beautiful little low break, lower high, lows, lower high, low, lower high, and obviously a dropout past the prior support, thus giving us that huge dump right to yesterday's highs, gap filling the Qs. But just a small take note right here, and if I mix this with Fibonacci, which I like to do, this double top with the anchor VWAPs just became a beautiful visual of rolling resistance for us to confirm that downside call that we were waiting for. So if I grab my little Fibonacci here and I take a high-low range, which I like to do, this is the opening range for that first high push. So this is, again, the open low, right after 8:30 a.m. and then all the way to that first push, which is high a day. And all I'm doing is grabbing the first current low and high of the day, putting it to the downside and confirming with myself that the Fibonacci high low point, like I always like to do, anything underneath that golden pocket range was confirmation of weakness. And we cracked right at the top of the golden pocket perfectly while having those anchor VWAPs on, slowly rolling resistance in. And lo and behold, the target, obviously the 1618 because Fibonacci works. So that is the recap. Very solid day today. Huge greens across 5,100 and 6 grand respectively across some of the big accounts and small cash accounts. If you ever want to hang out with us in chat, you want to do this and see me do it live, first link in the description. Check it out. If you want to ever come in and just grab some cash off YouTube, all you got to do is make sure you're subscribed, give the video a like, comment. That gets you entered, and I will use a comment picker Sunday coming up for our live stream during the Futures Open, and we will pick a cash winner. That's it. Free money. Simple as that for supporting the channel. Thanks again, guys. Tune in for the next.